Any thoughts?
Well, I'm
Yeah.
wondering if, I mean, obviously that's the ecumenical face of Merton.
Yeah. Yeah.
um, so important. But I'm wondering if you can talk about uh, where was it that he had the experience in Asia. It's a
With
he
the reclining,
visits.
the reclining Buddha.
Yes.
Yeah. I'll tell you about that. Yes.
Yeah, I'd like you to talk about it because it's
Okay. Yeah.
quite
About
something.
yeah. When he was invited toward the end of his, it was after the relationship with the nurse and all this stuff, and he was invited to an international conference in Bangkok, Thailand, of monastics from around the world. And Dom James Fox was no longer abbot, so the new abbot was more of a devotee of Merton, and he was invited to attend the conference, and so he was allowed to go to that conference. And so he's with these monastics from all over the world, really gathering this organization. And he saw it, one, to be there, but he also saw it as a chance to meet the Buddhists firsthand and to be with them firsthand because of the work that he had done in contemplative interfaith dialogue with Abraham Heschel and Sufis and other people.
DT
So when he,
Suzuki, right?
what's that?
With DT,
D.T. Suzuki.
yeah.
Yeah, with D.T. Suzuki. D.T. Suzuki came to meet him. He went to Colombia
Mm-hmm.
to have a meeting with Suzuki, got to do that, which is the tea ceremony text about
Mm-hmm.
the gulp of tea. And then Suzuki came to visit him, and their collected dialogues are published. And so Zen and the Birds of Appetite
Right.
has their dialogues with D.T. Suzuki. And then Vietnam, Thich Nhat Hanh came. So he saw it as a chance to go with these Buddhists and to study with them firsthand. And that's when he met the Dalai Lama. So His Holiness the Dalai Lama in Merton, it was the Dalai Lama's voice there talking about this rapprochement. They had this deep recognition of each other. And while on that journey, he went to Sri Lanka. And a few years back, it's so lovely, my wife wanted to do this for me and with me. She wanted to give me this special gift of taking me to Sri Lanka so I could stand before the reclining Buddha where Merton had this experience. So
Mm-hmm.
I did that. It was great.
Nice.
And and so in Sri Lanka, it's ruins. It's just beautiful ruins there in Sri Lanka. It's just a beautiful country. Deep, like the Buddhas. It's just the people there and the tradition. I went to different Wats and spoke with the monks, and it was great. And so I got to stand there at this statue, and it's the Buddha in Nirvana, or he's sleeping. You know, he's in the sleep of Nirvana or Parinirvana, beyond the great Nirvana. And it's just as a work of art. You can see it on the internet. I think it's beautiful. It's a huge piece. This reclining Buddha carved out of the face of this rock, and it's while standing there at before this reclining Buddha that he speaks of having this overwhelming experience of this all-pervasive oneness. You know, and and he was to die shortly after that. So, you know, he was at the conference. He died
Mm-hmm.
there. So just before his death, then before this reclining Buddha, he had that realization of this kind of trans-historical, trans-cultural, trans-traditional, you know, all boundaryless overflow in all directions of the one thing alone that's real, that kind of thing. And so that was you know, like a huge, like a great, like a crescendo for him. It was one of these moments for him. And so it was very meaningful for me to stand there. It was a hot, sunny day. And a little moment for me is my wife was sitting up on the edge of a little hill under a tree with our guide, so I could be alone there. And while I was there, a butterfly, a big butterfly with green wings, landed on the thigh of the Buddha, you know, and was fanning its wings in the sun, you know. And it was one of these moments where this, you know, the utter simplicity, like turning to see a flock of birds descending,
Mm-hmm.
you know, the utter simplicity of something is a metaphor for everything, kind of thing. And so it was a lovely moment for me to be able to be there. But that's what that's referring to.
Mm-hmm.
So then when he ties in the Dalai Lama, he's tying in um, his dialogues there. And had he lived, he wanted to continue and deepen that dialogue. And then he writes back to the community just before he died. He said, the more I get to know my Buddhist brothers and sisters, the more I appreciate my faith in Christ.
Mm-hmm.
May he live in the hearts of all of us. So it wasn't some idea of him moving from Christianity to Buddhism,
Mm-hmm.
which would have been had he done that. But it was actually he found in the heart of his Christ consciousness, what the Dalai Lama and the Buddhists find in the heart of the Dharma. And he saw that recognition of the oneness that permeates the differences and yet respects the differences as differences. And so that's a big thing about. And therefore, Merton says the world will not survive religion based on tribal consciousness. It'll destroy the world. But if those who arrive at what's truest in their own tradition, which transcends their own tradition, they recognize each other. And if they would speak up, religious people could be a source of world unity and world peace, liberation from tribal consciousness. And so anyway, so it's another big piece of Merton.
Yeah, and I would mention that Morgan Atkinson, you know him. He made this beautiful, the last days and many stories. I think that's what it's called. The Last Days and Many Stories of Thomas Merton. And there's a section in that documentary. It's a film where you can watch. There's a lot of his journaling about that experience at the.
I saw that film. It's a beautiful film. Wow.
Yeah, and people can see what that reclining Buddha looks like in that. And also, what I found interesting reading his journals, and then knowing kind of what his route was as he was in Asia was the text that I sing in this song. My brothers and sisters, we are already one.
Yeah.
We imagine we are not. What we have to be is what we are. Love has overcome. Yeah. Powerful, beautiful, simple words,
Yeah.
But I think those words were spoken, if I'm not mistaken, after that time where he was at the reclining Buddha, because I know it was on same journey.
Yep. Yeah, because when he said that, it was at that conference he gave that talk on Marxism and monasticism.
Mm-hmm.
And his thesis was, it was before the fall of the Iron Curtain and so on. He said, so Karl Marx, is a call to change the world. He said the call of the contemplative is we'll never change the world unless we focus on the transformation of our hearts, which is the message of the monk, whether Buddhist, Catholic, or whatever it is. And then when he gave that talk, his last words were, I shall disappear. Right. He went up to his room and died. He was electrocuted there at that conference. So that was after that. It was just he was going to die. He died at that conference, which makes it all the more poignant.